thank you for joining us on today's webinar. And not surprisingly, we did see quite a few questions be asked regarding the travel advisory. And so we thought we'd take this opportunity to answer a couple of them for you. And so, Teresa, one of the questions that we've gotten asked, and some of the discussions that we've had relates to the extent to which the Executive Order 205 or the related Department of Health guidance applies directly to New York State residents returning from travel, as opposed to out-of-state residents who are traveling to New York for whatever purpose. And so, with your understanding of the executive order and the document, guidance document, can you give some information about how those apply to New York residents?
Sure. So for a New York resident, and again, it's going to go back from an employment angle, whether that person is essential or non-essential, right? So speaking about a non-essential New York resident returning, they're going to be subject to that 14-day quarantine. And the question we got asked is, do they have to do anything else during that 14-day quarantine period, or do they just basically have to stay at home? And the answer is yes, there is more that they have to do. If you look at the Department of Health guidance, it has a bullet or a section called quarantine requirements that has a bunch of bullets underneath it about different things that people who are in quarantine are expected to do. It's actually quite detailed, and basically those people are required to stay in the house, and even in a separated area of the house away from other family members. So it's more than just that person can't come to work for 14 days. That person also has other restrictions that are applicable to them. And again, if an individual does not follow those restrictions, they could be subject to a penalty if the state becomes aware.
One of the other questions that we've gotten, and one of the things that we've had some discussion about, not surprisingly, is now with these travel-related issues in play, to what extent do we as employers have any kind of obligation to, or should we be modifying our daily health screen of employees to incorporate questions, that talk about this travel issue? So, what do you think?
So a couple of things here. I think it's a good idea, to the extent that you're using health surveys for your employees before they come into the workplace, to modify that health survey to include a question or a couple of questions about whether or not they've traveled to one of the states that's been marked as restricted by New York Department of Health. So you can do that by asking your employees to answer whether they've been to one of the restricted states and list the restricted states, keeping in mind that that changes, asking them if they were in the restricted state for more than 24 hours, because please keep in mind that the DOH guidance says if you're in the restricted state for fewer than 24 hours, you're not subject to the quarantine. And then asking the person when they returned to New York State, so that you as the employer know when their 14-day quarantine period is supposed to start.
All very, very good points. Thank you so much, and we hope this has been helpful.